story of the stone is a timeless parable that teaches us about self-worth and the environments we choose to place ourselves in. Today, I want to explore this profound lesson through the journey of a young boy named Daniel and his wise father, who used a simple stone to illustrate one of life's most important truths. Imagine a bright spring morning, the kind where the air feels fresh with possibility. 12-year-old Daniel sat on the front steps of his family home, his shoulders slumped and his expression troubled. He had just returned from school where, once again, he felt invisible in some circles yet valued in others. This contradiction weighed heavily on his young mind. Father Daniel called out as he spotted his dad working in the garden. "Why do some people treat me like I don't matter while others act like I'm important? How do I know my true value?" His father, a man of few words but deep wisdom, looked up from his work. Instead of immediately answering, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something that caught the morning sunlight. It was a smooth, radiant stone, not particularly large but with an unusual luster that made it stand out. The stone had flecks of light dancing across its polished surface. "Take this stone," his father said, placing it gently in Daniel's palm. "Go to the marketplace, sit quietly in the corner. And if anyone asks about its price, don't say anything. Just hold up 2 fingers." Daniel examined the stone, turning it over in his hand. It was beautiful in a simple way, but he couldn't understand what this had to do with his question. Nevertheless, he trusted his father's guidance and set off toward the bustling marketplace in the center of town. The market was alive with activity, vendors calling out their wares, customers haggling over prices, children weaving through the crowds. Daniel found a quiet corner near a vegetable stall and sat down, holding the stone in his open palm, where the sunlight made it gleam. Before long, an elderly woman selling vegetables noticed him. She approached with a kind smile, her face weathered by years of working outdoors. "What a lovely stone you have there, child," she said, her wrinkled hands reaching out to touch it. "Are you selling it? How much would you like for it?" Remembering his father's instructions, Daniel said nothing but simply held up 2 fingers. The woman nodded. "2 coins. That seems fair enough. It would make a nice paperweight for my recipes." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out 2 small copper coins. Daniel was surprised. Was this beautiful stone worth only 2 coins? He shook his head politely and stood up, thanking the woman before hurrying back home. "Father," he called out as he burst through the door. A woman in the market wanted to buy the stone for just 2 coins. His father looked up from his book and smiled knowingly. "Now take it to the jewelry shop on Main Street." Curious about where this experiment was leading, Daniel made his way to the jewelry shop. It was a place he rarely entered, a store with gleaming display cases and an air of exclusivity. The jeweler, a middle-aged man with spectacles perched on his nose, was arranging items in a display case when Daniel entered. "Can I help you, young man?" the jeweler asked, noticing the stone in Daniel's hand. Daniel stepped forward and showed him the stone. The jeweler's eyes widened with interest. He took the stone carefully and examined it under a magnifying glass, turning it this way and that. "This is quite a nice piece," he said. "Where did you find it? The cut is unusual, and the clarity is remarkable for a stone of this type." Daniel remained silent when asked about the price, simply holding up 2 fingers as instructed. 200 coins, the jeweler clarified. "That's a fair price for this piece. I could use it in a pendant or ring setting. I'll pay you 200 coins for it." Daniel's eyes widened in astonishment. The same stone that the market woman valued at 2 coins was worth 200 to the jeweler. He politely declined the offer and rushed home to tell his father. "Father, the jeweler wanted to pay 200 coins for the same stone," Daniel exclaimed, still trying to process the dramatic difference in valuation. His father nodded thoughtfully. "Now take it to the gemstone market on the east side of town." The gemstone market was farther away, in a wealthier district where merchants traded rare and precious stones from distant lands. Daniel had never been there before. When he arrived, he felt out of place among the well-dressed merchants and their affluent customers. Still, he found a spot near a busy stall and held the stone where it could be seen. It didn't take long before a sharp-eyed gem merchant noticed him. The merchant, dressed in fine clothes that spoke of his success, approached Daniel with keen interest. "Young man," he said, his voice low and serious, "may I see what you're holding?" Daniel allowed him to examine the stone. The merchant pulled out a special eyepiece and studied it intently, his expression growing more excited by the second. "Do you know what you have here?" he asked, barely containing his enthusiasm. This is no ordinary stone. The mineral composition and crystalline structure are quite rare. What are you asking for it? Once again, Daniel held up 2 fingers without speaking. The merchant's eyebrows shot up. 2,000. That's actually quite reasonable. In fact, I'll offer you 5,000 coins for it right now. This would make an excellent addition to my collection. Daniel could hardly believe his ears. 5,000 coins. He carefully took back the stone, thanked the merchant, and practically ran all the way home, his mind racing with confusion and excitement. "Father," he gasped, out of breath from running. The gem merchant offered 5,000 coins for the stone. "How is that possible?" His father smiled, a twinkle in his eye. "One last stop, Daniel. Take the stone to the city museum and show it to the curator." By now, Daniel was bursting with curiosity about what would happen next. The museum was a grand building with marble columns and impressive exhibits showcasing the region's history. Daniel had visited on school trips, but had never spoken with the curator before. He found the curator, a distinguished woman with silver-streaked hair, examining an ancient pottery display. Gathering his courage, Daniel approached her and showed her the stone. The moment the curator laid eyes on it, her professional demeanor gave way to visible shock. She nearly dropped her clipboard as she carefully took the stone from Daniel's hand. "My word," she whispered, examining it with trembling fingers. This is not just any stone. This appears to be an artifact from the ancient civilization that once inhabited this region. The markings, the composition. Where do you find this?" When Daniel indicated the price with his 2 fingers, the curator looked at him in disbelief. 200,000 coins. That's actually less than its historical value, but our museum would be honored to acquire it. This belongs where people can learn from it and appreciate its significance. I can arrange for payment immediately. Daniel's head was spinning as he carefully reclaimed the stone and thanked the curator. 200,000 coins. The same stone that the market woman had valued at just 2. He clutched the precious object tightly as he made his way home, his mind filled with questions. When he arrived home, his father was waiting patiently on the porch, as if he knew exactly when Daniel would return. "Father," Daniel began, his voice filled with wonder, "the museum curator offered 200,000 coins for the stone. She said it's an ancient artifact. How can one stone have so many different prices?" The woman at the market thought it was worth almost nothing, but to the museum it's a treasure. His father finally sat beside him on the porch steps, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "My son, you asked me about your value in this world. Just like this stone, your worth isn't fixed or determined by a single person's opinion. It depends on where you place yourself and who is doing the evaluating." He took the stone from Daniel's hand and held it up to catch the late afternoon sunlight. To the vegetable seller, this was just a pretty rock. She couldn't recognize its true value because she lacks the knowledge and context to appreciate it. To the jeweler, it was a gemstone with commercial potential. To the gem merchant, it was a rare specimen worth much more. And to the curator, who has the deepest understanding of its historical significance, it was priceless. Daniel listened intently, beginning to understand the profound lesson his father was teaching. "People will value you based on their own understanding, needs, and perspective," his father continued. "Some will fail to see your true worth and treat you as ordinary, or even worthless. Others might recognize some of your value but still underestimate you. And then there are those rare few who will truly see and appreciate your full potential and unique qualities." He handed the stone back to Daniel. The stone didn't change as it traveled from the market to the museum. What changed was who was looking at it and the environment it was in. Similarly, your intrinsic value doesn't change based on others' opinions, but how you're treated and the opportunities you receive certainly will. Daniel turned the stone over in his hands, seeing it with new eyes. "So, I shouldn't let how others treat me define how I see myself." "Exactly," his father nodded. "But there's more to it than that. You also need to be mindful of where you place yourself. If you spend all your time in environments where people can't recognize your unique gifts, you'll never reach your full potential. Seek out places and people that challenge you to grow and that appreciate what makes you special." Daniel thought about his school experiences, how in his art class, his creativity was celebrated, while in other settings, those same qualities were overlooked or even discouraged. "It's about finding the right fit," his father explained, "not about changing who you are to please others." The stone didn't have to become something else to be valuable. It just needed to be in the right environment where its true nature could be recognized and appreciated. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the porch, Daniel felt a new sense of clarity. So, my value isn't determined by others, but by where I choose to stand and how I see myself. His father smiled proudly. That's right. And remember, even when you're in a place where others don't recognize your worth, it doesn't diminish who you are. The stone was always valuable, even when the market woman offered only 2 coins for it. Its true nature never changed. In the days that followed, Daniel carried this lesson with him. He began to notice how different environments either nurtured or diminished his spirits. He started seeking out people and places that recognized his strengths and challenged him to grow. Most importantly, he developed an inner confidence that wasn't easily shaken by others' perceptions. Years later, when Daniel had grown into a confident young man with a clear sense of purpose, he found the stone in an old box. Holding it in his palm, he was reminded of that pivotal day and the wisdom his father had shared. The stone hadn't changed, but Daniel's understanding of himself and his place in the world certainly had. This story teaches us a profound truth about self-worth and personal value. Like the stone in Daniel's hand, our value isn't determined by any single person's assessment. Some people will fail to see our worth, viewing us as ordinary or unremarkable. Others might recognize some of our qualities but still undervalue us. And then there are those who will truly see our potential and the unique gifts we bring to the world. The key insight is that we must be mindful of where we place ourselves. If we consistently remain in environments where our talents and qualities aren't recognized or appreciated, we may begin to doubt our own worth. We might even start to believe the limited assessments others have of us. Instead, we should seek out places and relationships where we can flourish, environments that recognize our unique contributions and challenge us to grow. This doesn't mean surrounding ourselves only with people who praise us uncritically. Rather, it means finding contexts where our authentic selves are truly seen and valued. At the same time, we must develop an internal sense of worth that isn't entirely dependent on external validation. Even when others fail to recognize our value, we can maintain confidence in who we are and what we have to offer. Like the stone that was inherently valuable regardless of who was assessing it, our intrinsic worth doesn't change based on others' perceptions. This lesson applies to so many aspects of life, from personal relationships to career choices, from educational environments to community involvement. In each of these contexts, we face the question of where to place ourselves and how to maintain a strong sense of self-worth, even when others might not see our full potential. The story also reminds us to look beyond surface appearances when assessing the value of others. Just as the market woman couldn't recognize the true worth of the stone, we too might fail to see the unique gifts and potential in the people around us. By approaching others with curiosity and openness, we create environments where everyone's true value can be recognized and celebrated. In our modern world, where external validation through social media likes and followers can seem all-important, this message is perhaps more relevant than ever. We must remember that our worth isn't determined by how many people recognize it, but by our own understanding of who we are and the conscious choices we make about where to invest our time and energy. Like Daniel, we all face moments of doubt and confusion about our place in the world. We all encounter people who fail to see our true value or who treat us as less than we are. The challenge is to remember the lesson of the stone, that our worth doesn't change based on others' assessments, but our opportunities to share our gifts with the world certainly will fill his shoes to stand. So, as you move through your life, ask yourself, are you placing yourself in environments where your unique qualities are recognized and valued? Are you surrounding yourself with people who see your potential, even when you might not see it yourself? And most importantly, are you maintaining an inner sense of worth that remains steady regardless of external validation? The stone in Daniel's hand was always valuable, from the marketplace to the museum. Its nature never changed, only the context in which it was evaluated. Similarly, your intrinsic worth remains constant. The question is whether you're placing yourself where that worth can be fully recognized, appreciated, and allowed to shine. In the end, the most important assessment of your value comes not from the marketplace, not from others, but from within. When you truly understand your own worth, you can move through the world with confidence, seeking out the places and relationships where you can make your greatest contribution. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson of all.